Alba Matter, expounding the virtues of Scottish footballing talent. I'll have a G in McTee with a slice of meatball. Scotland's midfield. Part 2, Scott McTominay. After the 60-year Munich memorial service had drawn to a solemn close inside Old Trafford in February 2018, survivors and their families appeared to mix warmly with players, coaches and employees of previous years, as well as the current staff and squad. As often accompanies the period just after sombre ceremonies, you can imagine that the attendees, having been gripped in the fleeting acknowledgement of how precious life is, began to think and talk of things less weighty. Some fans were present and taking out their phones to record a final canticle which had broken out regarding the Busby Babes. They managed to film Zlatan Ibrahimovic leaving before Scott McTominay similarly drew their attention. The players were seen stooping to each shake hands deferentially and respectfully with an older gentleman in the row in front. As the superstar Swede passed, it wasn't his hand who the elder grabbed, held on too tightly and had a quiet word for. He saved that for McTominay, who, aware that he was in a queue, nodded respectfully and tried to move on. Except he couldn't. The old hand, which had only recently released its grip on the last of 38 trophies it lifted with Manchester United, held on, seeming to repeat the advice, nodding whilst clearly saying, "Right?" It reminded me of my mother saying, "Andrew, I'm telling, not asking you." And this was more of a telling than a question, delivered as only a Glaswegian could, and I did what my mother told me. This wasn't the first time that they'd shaken hands either, for Sir Alex had met the young Lancaster-born Scot and his family numerous times, ever since he joined the club as a 5-year-old. In fact, Ferguson took the wee skelf, as he affectionately dubbed the younger McTominay, into the first team dressing room for a Premier League match against Fulham to celebrate the signing of his scholarship, something he'd done many a time with the class of '92. It is such moments that make this latest interaction, adjacent to the stand named after the old master, all the more poignant as you feel it was merely the latest, right, in a longitudinal conversation, with McTominay the latest in a long list of famous recipients. Sir Alex invested in players, and in turn they invested in him and Manchester United, with such dedication that success inevitably followed. He knows character when he sees it, those who have the mentality and ability to play what he used to demand, the United way. As the then 21-year-old strode away, presumably buoyed by the interaction, it was Jose Mourinho's turn to be told, in no uncertain terms, that boy is a player. We can only infer what was said, of course, but by the repeated gesticulation of Sir Alex towards the 6'4" midfielder, now walking down the East Stand staircase, you could see that a similar transmission of data was being attempted by Ferguson. Mourinho, ever one to extol the achievements of his fine wine-loving managerial alumni, seemed to be saying, "I know, boss, I know." If Zlatan and Jose were deferential, the United faithful were not always so. Sir Alex was questioned and even faux-mocked amongst fans for repeatedly playing Darren Fletcher. In the 90s, this could fairly have been levelled at another Darren, but when it was clear that his son did not possess the quality to play alongside Ince, he was moved on. Ferguson wasn't sentimental. Winning was his aim. Concerning Fletcher, before he was Scotland captain and voted into the PFA Team of the Year by his peers, he was lining up amongst the superstars of Veron and Van Nistelrooy, and even that oft out of position on the right flank. However, as they had done before, the Stretford end grew to appreciate Ferguson's trust in a player's qualities, affectionately, if not altogether sincerely, dubbing him Darren Fletcher, football genius, along the way. Though as Fletcher seemed to grow with the opposition, it could be argued that they sang this truth into existence. From 2007 to 2011, before Fletcher's illness struck most severely, he played the best football of his career and silenced the doubters with some superb all-action displays against the very best. In fact, Fletcher was probably United's standout midfielder in the 2010-11 season, when he was mistakenly adjudged to have fouled Fabregas in the Champions League semi-final win over Arsenal. This wasn't just some personal tragedy either, when Fletcher turned to see his dreams reflected in suspension from a yellow card. The discerning football fan also knew that United's job of closing down Barcelona in the final was immediately more difficult, as none could replace his industry, aggression and selflessness. I say this because McTominay drew immediate comparisons to Fletcher when he broke through. Both Scottish, both unglamorous in approach, both hard-working, defensively minded midfielders, making their mark at a time when United were not the best team in England, although they were far closer to it in Fletcher's case. At both periods, United fans wanted glamour, big names, and immediate results. Therefore, some saw it as the latest Mourinho charade, or at least a dig at the lack of budget available, when he presented McTominay with the inaugural Managers Award at the United Awards dinner in May 2018. However, with hindsight, it appears more like one of his football genius moments, because no one is questioning the Portuguese now. In his own words, Mourinho could not accept that the Scot went home empty-handed that night.
Jose, lovely to have you here.
Thank you.
We were speaking earlier and you said there's a Players' Player Award, there's a Fans' Player Award, but you, as the boss of Manchester United, would like to hand out your own particular award tonight.
I think the dream of every boy that arrives in the club is to play for the first team. And when the dream becomes true, the next dream is to play big matches and to play Champions League and eventually to play for the national team. This player did everything in 5 or 6 months. So my player of the year has to be Scott McTominay.
This relentless personal commitment to doing anything means McTominay is able to post videos of athlete standard 5k times on social media whilst in lockdown, alongside other videos showing his immaculate touch as he kills the ball dead, Ronaldinho style, after punting it in the air, Peter Kay style. He is the carburetor at the heart of the engine room, the kickstarter that is ready to go full throttle at a moment's notice, revving up to enforce the manager's game plan with unrelenting zeal. And if you had to impress just 2 managers to get your career going, Ferguson and Mourinho are not a bad pairing. The former, arguably the finest manager to have lived, or certainly in the conversation, advocated a terrifically enterprising and swashbuckling form of attacking football that dominated the Premier League for 2 decades. The latter, easily the most successful manager since Ferguson, alongside a certain Spaniard, finds a way to win repeatedly, across cultures, across languages, across styles, without compromise. From old to new, from artists to pragmatists, McTominay counts them amongst his admirers. So instead of asking, what does he actually do that sets him apart, I thought we'd retrace his rather large steps and try to find the answer in that along the way, much in the way he plays the game. His football genius comes out in application of the unglamorous and dedicated approach. The Skelf Ferguson referred to was clearly not the muscle-clad, all-action midfielder that won praise for his performances against Manchester City and the best midfielder in the Premier League, Kevin De Bruyne, nor against Busquets in Barcelona and PSG's Verratti in the Champions League. At the age of 18, the midfielder was almost a foot smaller, slight, and a very different player. He was, in fact, a forward, the residual effect of which can still be seen by the impressive strikes he has converted, predominantly from defensive midfield, exhibiting a real calmness in front of goal when it matters most. My first impressions of him were just that. Back in the summer of 2017, whilst viewing a wide circle of highlights in preparation for the new fantasy football season, I stumbled across a gem of a finish by a certain tall, blonde United player with a Mick in his name. I hadn't heard of him before.
Martial. Taking the direct route here, Martial. He tried to play in Scott McTominay, who finds it. McTominay! Great moment for the young man. Lovely finish from Scott McTominay, really composed, and United have 3 in Oslo.
That's a terrific goal, Stuart. That guy's got his back towards the goal. He obviously knows where the goal is. That's a terrific goal, that.
A quick Google proved he was eligible for both Scotland and England, but that he considered himself Scottish. Excitedly, I texted my WhatsApp groups the goal and said, "Keep an eye on this kid," which was met by the familiar swathes of pathos and indifference that often greeted my relentless positivity of the Scottish game. Now, I certainly am not saying I told you so, or even I liked McTominay's first album. What I am saying is that there was something in the flick of his instep which was just there. How much did I then, as someone who did see the first tour might have felt, feel vindicated when McTominay not only made his debut for United and so achieved a top 20 single, but fast became their standout midfielder in the absence of Paul Pogba and followed it up with decent B-sides and a difficult second album too. Let's just say I bought the t-shirt. Of course, my friends mocked, you were bound to get one right. But now, alongside Billy Gilmour, who cites McTominay as his most difficult opponent, remember Gilmour has played against Neves and Fabinho, they are finding that, all along, I was right to be optimistic.
We can almost say he's undroppable at the moment, definitely. The physical presence he gives us, the leadership he gives us in midfield there, Man United fans love to see players play with courage.
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. How do you go from a skelf to undroppable at Manchester United? We can get a clue by those closest to him, and in Nemanja Matic's case, from those in direct competition for a place in the starting lineup. Speaking to Sky Sports after United cruised to a 2-0 win at Stamford Bridge, the Serbian was glowing in praise. He is amazing. He is 21, and to play like that and control the game like that is impressive. He will be a big player for Manchester United. I like him because he is a very nice guy, and he doesn't have a problem to ask something before the game. I am always there to help him. When I came to Manchester, I saw within a few days he would become a top player. He is working very hard, but I don't want to say too many things about him, because he is still very young, but he deserves all the good things. I wonder what word or phrase sticks out to you from Matic's generosity. It's nice to hear that McTominay is a nice guy, but if I were teaching here, I'd be asking for more descriptive words, please, Nemanja. I know it's your second or third language, and I would bludgeon your beautiful native tongue with my lazy Glaswegian accent, but can we try something else? Could become a top player is better, but is it anything different to what you would say about your other teammates? I reread Matic's words, alongside lots of other quotes on McTominay, and in doing so, I selected this as one word from his title-winning experienced midfield partner that I skipped over numerous times in my rush to the meat of the passage. The word control. McTominay had control over the Chelsea midfield by winning the ball back repeatedly. He had control against PSG when he ran all over Verratti. He demonstrated excellent close control against City as he showed De Bruyne the easy defensive pass before shifting towards goal, wrong-footing the Belgian and setting United on the attack. If you're noticing a theme here, it's that McTominay does this all the time, against everyone, even, or rather particularly, against the best. McTominay sees the big games approaching and runs head on to meet them. This is the spirit of Fletcher, because it is the spirit of Ferguson. This is Man United mentality of old. That his surname achieved semantic perfection by complementing dominate so resplendently, I'm almost embarrassed but cannot fail to mention. It is simply what he does. There is no better word for it. It is what people talk about when they say he intercepts, breaks up play, or slightly more negatively, destroys. In truth, however, it is really only half the story, as generally, roughly half of football is played without the ball. When the other team has the ball, you need a plan to get it back, or you miss out on half the game. Or as Brian Clough put it, they had the ball more than we did, and on our pitch, that's sacrilege. Without the ball, McTominay is as strong a ball winner as I can recall. He is a monster. But how is he with it? The previous illustration against Kevin De Bruyne could be a fluke, except that he showed the same cool head, deft touch and lightness of foot against Barcelona. Not once, but twice. Firstly, by holding off 3 of the Catalans and picking a pass out wide, before secondly, sending Arturo Vidal the wrong way and walking out of his own box. The performance on the biggest stage was enough to earn him best player on the pitch from Gary Lineker and Rio Ferdinand, showing for the ball and retaining possession against the possession kings. Referring to other elements of his game, Ferdinand picked up on his progress, showing that he can also pick a pass, drive forward with the ball, and strike it with venom. Continuing plaudits were accumulated throughout the 25 games he managed in the curtailed 1920 season. Consistency was achieved across such a high standard that even though injury robbed him of a lot of football, prompting the Solskjaer quote from before, The Athletic still awarded McTominay the Manchester United Young Player of the Year, and few could argue, although the excellent Aaron Wan-Bissaka might have a case. I, like many, am a huge fan of the fullback. but must agree with the choice of winner, and not just because I'm biased. In the period he wasn't playing, McTominay's absence was felt to the extent that Solskjaer could do nothing but agree with the assertion that he was undroppable. He is fast becoming more than just a dominator. He is a leader too. He makes other players better. Like Fletcher before him, in his absence, his stature increased, except that it seems McTominay has arrived in credibility a wee bit earlier than his compatriot, no doubt because of the path the boy from Dalkeith forged for him. Enforcer, Destroyer, Colossus. They all seem too trite in describing what he brings. He harries as well as anyone in the league and recovers possession, sure. But he also rarely loses possession, despite frequently attempting forward passes. He carries the ball too, bursting with pace and power in a similar manner to the way Yaya Toure used to. I know he has a long way to go before emulating Toure. However, consider that no one saw the Ivorian as a potential 20-goal-a-season man. What I mean to say is that McTominay continually surprises and improves. That is unarguable. And next season, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see a few more goals and assists to accompany his talents. With Gilmour beside him and McGinn slightly in front, Scotland have a potential midfield lineup for the next decade to rival any in the UK. And, as I don't think attitude or focus will be a problem for them, the only thing required of us is that more people start to believe it when an article is pinged to them in WhatsApp. If, over the period, anyone accuses you of going overboard in hype, just say that you're agreeing with Mourinho. And if they still scoff, then play the top trump in Fergie, because that boy's a player, and he's telling, no asking, right? Words by Andrew Lang, read by Finlay Marks. If you enjoyed this article, check out similar ones on our website, albamatter.com, or search @Alba Matter on social media.